What if the biggest thing ruining your life isn't bad luck, toxic people, or a lack of opportunity? What if it's something you're doing every single day without realizing it? Most people think they're making decisions, not next year, not next month, today. The Stoics noticed something fascinating about human nature. Most people suffer far more in their imagination than they do in reality. Think about the last thing that kept you awake at night. Maybe it was a conversation, a decision, a mistake, a future problem that hasn't even happened yet. Notice what the mind does. It creates scenarios. Then it reacts to those scenarios as if they are real. Your heart beats faster. Your mood changes. Your energy disappears. Nothing in the outside world has changed. Yet internally, a storm has already begun. This is where the first Stoic rule becomes life-changing. Stop fighting battles that exist only in your mind. Imagine you're waiting for a reply from someone important. 5 minutes pass, then 20, then an hour. Nothing has happened. Yet your peace is already disappearing. The mind starts creating stories. Maybe they're upset. Maybe they're ignoring you. Maybe you've done something wrong. Notice how quickly imagination becomes reality. This is how many people spend their lives, not reacting to facts, reacting to assumptions. The Stoics understood that suffering often begins long before the actual problem arrives. Sometimes, the problem never arrives at all, yet the emotional damage has already been done. That is why one of the greatest forms of self-mastery is learning to question your thoughts before obeying them. Not every fear deserves your attention. Not every thought deserves your belief. Not every emotion deserves your reaction. The moment you learn this, your mind becomes quieter, and when the mind becomes quieter, reality becomes clearer. But once you stop fighting imaginary battles, another enemy appears, one that lives much closer to home, your own excuses. The second Stoic rule is simple. Stop breaking promises to yourself. Most people don't lose confidence because they fail. They lose confidence because they stop trusting themselves. Every time you say tomorrow and don't follow through, every time you delay something important, every time you choose comfort over commitment, your subconscious notices, and slowly self-respect begins to weaken. Confidence is not built by motivational quotes. Confidence is built when your actions repeatedly prove that your word means something. A person who trusts himself walks differently, speaks differently, decides differently, because deep down he knows he can rely on himself, and that changes everything. But there is another hidden force that destroys confidence even faster than failure. Most people encounter it every single day. Many even call it motivation. The Stoics called it a trap. The trap is comparison. And the reason it feels so dangerous is because it rarely announces itself as a problem. It arrives quietly. You open your phone for a few minutes. You see someone making more money, someone getting more attention, someone achieving goals that you haven't reached yet. Within seconds, your mood changes. Nothing in your life has actually become worse, yet somehow you feel behind. This is one of the strangest weaknesses of the human mind. We can spend years making progress, then lose sight of it in a single moment by looking at someone else's journey. The Stoics understood something that social media has made even more important. A distracted mind cannot appreciate its own growth, and a person who constantly compares himself will never feel like enough. Imagine climbing a mountain. You've been moving upward for months. You've overcome obstacles. You've grown stronger. You've come farther than you ever thought possible. Then suddenly you look at someone standing on a higher peak. Instantly, your attention leaves your progress and attaches itself to your lack. That is what comparison does. It blinds you to your own path. Most people think comparison motivates them. Sometimes it does, but more often it creates frustration, insecurity, and self-doubt, because the mind starts asking dangerous questions. Why am I not there yet? What's wrong with me? Why does everyone else seem ahead? The problem is that these questions are based on incomplete information. You see the outcome. You don't see the sacrifice. You see the success. You don't see the loneliness. You see the reward. You don't see the years of uncertainty that came before it. And because the mind hates uncertainty, it fills in the missing pieces, usually in ways that hurt you. The Stoics offered a different approach. Instead of comparing yourself to another person, compare yourself to who you were yesterday. That is a competition you can actually win, because real growth is not about becoming better than someone else. It's about becoming better than your former self. And when your focus returns to your own path, something remarkable happens. You stop chasing other people's lives and start building your own. But comparison is not the deepest trap. There is something hiding underneath it, something even more powerful: the need for approval. Many people spend their entire lives trying to earn permission to feel valuable. They want everyone to like them, everyone to agree with them, everyone to understand them. At first, this sounds harmless, but it creates a dangerous dependency, because the moment your self-worth depends on other people, your peace is no longer yours. Think about how often people change their behavior to avoid criticism. They stay silent when they should speak. They agree when they actually disagree. They hide parts of themselves to gain acceptance. Little by little, they trade authenticity for approval, and most don't even realize it's happening. The Stoics believed that seeking universal approval was impossible. No matter how kind you are, someone will misunderstand you. No matter how honest you are, someone will criticize you. No matter how successful you become, someone will judge you. This isn't a flaw in life. It's part of life. The moment you accept this, an enormous burden falls away, because you stop trying to control how every person sees you and start focusing on how you see yourself. That shift changes everything. When criticism arrives, it no longer destroys your confidence. When rejection appears, it no longer defines your worth. When someone dislikes you, it no longer feels like proof that something is wrong with you. You begin realizing that another person's opinion is information, not identity, and that realization creates a level of freedom many people never experience. But there is still one question that remains. If your worth does not come from approval, then where does it come from? The answer is simple, but it has the power to transform the way you see yourself forever. True self-worth is built through self-respect, not applause, not attention, not validation. Self-respect. It grows every time you act according to your values, every time you tell the truth when lying would be easier, every time you remain calm when reacting would be easier, every time you choose character over comfort. These moments seem small, but they quietly build an identity, and identity is powerful, because once you truly respect yourself, the world loses much of its ability to control you. You stop begging for acceptance. You stop chasing validation. You stop measuring your value through the eyes of strangers. For the first time, your confidence begins coming from within, and that is where real strength starts. Yet even after overcoming comparison and approval, there is one fear that continues to control millions of people. A fear responsible for more missed opportunities than almost anything else. A fear so common that most people mistake it for being careful. In reality, it is the silent architect of regret, and until it is understood, freedom remains incomplete. That fear is failure, not failure itself. The fear of it, the possibility of embarrassment, the possibility of rejection, the possibility of discovering that you're not as capable as you hoped. Most people never realize how many decisions are secretly controlled by this fear. They call it being realistic. They call it waiting for the right time. They call it being cautious. But often, it's simply fear wearing a smarter disguise. Think about the goals you've postponed, the opportunities you've talked yourself out of, the conversations you never had, the risks you never took, the dreams you quietly buried before they even had a chance to breathe. In many cases, the greatest pain wasn't failure. It was wondering what might have happened if you had tried. The Stoics understood something that separates strong people from weak ones. Strong people do not fear failure less. They simply refuse to let fear make their decisions, because they know something most people forget. Failure is an event. It is not an identity. Yet every day, people confuse the two. A failed business becomes, I'm a failure. A rejection becomes, I'm not worthy. A mistake becomes, I'm not good enough. And without noticing, a temporary experience becomes a permanent belief. This is where growth stops. Not because reality closed the door, because the mind did. The moment you separate your identity from your outcomes, life begins to change. You become willing to learn, willing to risk discomfort, willing to be a beginner, willing to look foolish for a while, because you understand that every person you admire once stood exactly where you are standing. Now, confused, uncertain, imperfect. The difference is that they moved anyway. While others waited for certainty, they acted. And action has always been the cure for fear. Not thinking, not planning endlessly, not waiting for confidence. Action. The Stoics knew that courage is not the absence of fear. It is movement despite fear. And once you understand this, another realization appears. A realization that changes how you see every day of your life. Time is running out. Not someday. Right now. The seventh and final Stoic rule is simple. Treat time as your most valuable possession. Most people protect their money more carefully than their time. They spend hours scrolling, hours worrying, hours replaying old mistakes, hours seeking approval from people who will never truly matter. Then they wonder where the years went. Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering you only had 1 year left to live. Not 100 years, not 20 years, 1 year. How many things would suddenly stop feeling important? How many arguments would lose their meaning? How many fears would look ridiculous? How many excuses would disappear overnight? This is why the Stoics reflected on mortality. Not to become depressed, but to become awake. Because awareness of life's limits creates clarity. One day, there will be a final conversation with someone you love. You won't know it's the final one. One day, there will be a final sunset. A final laugh, a final ordinary day that feels completely normal while it's happening. And that's exactly why time is precious. Not because it's rare, because it can never be replaced. The person who understands this stops living on autopilot. They stop postponing what matters. They stop waiting for the perfect moment. They stop assuming there will always be another chance. Because they finally understand something most people learn too late. Life is happening now, not next year, not when circumstances improve, not when fear disappears. Now. This is why these 7 Stoic rules have the power to change your life in a single day. Not because your circumstances suddenly change, but because your relationship with yourself changes. You stop fighting imaginary battles. You stop breaking promises to yourself. You stop comparing your life to other people's journeys. You stop chasing approval. You stop questioning your worth. You stop letting fear decide your future. And you stop wasting the one thing you can never recover, time. Most people spend their lives trying to control the world. The Stoics chose a different path. They learned to control themselves, and that made all the difference. Because the truth is, peace does not come from having a perfect life. It comes from having a disciplined mind. Confidence does not come from constant success. It comes from self-trust. Freedom does not come from controlling other people. It comes from no longer being controlled by them. Years from now, your life may look completely different. Different habits, different opportunities, different relationships, different results. But if that future ever arrives, it will not begin with a huge breakthrough. It will begin with a decision, a quiet decision, made on an ordinary day. The decision to stop surrendering your mind to things that do not deserve it. Because in the end, the greatest battle was never against circumstances, never against other people, never against the world. The greatest battle has always been within. And the beautiful thing is this. Every morning, life gives you another chance to win it. Not through force, not through anger, not through control, but through awareness, discipline, wisdom, and choice. Because the moment you master your mind, the world loses much of its power over you. And perhaps that's the greatest Stoic realization of all. Peace was never waiting somewhere in the future. It was waiting for the moment you finally stopped giving your power away.